before the pyramids rose, before empires were forged, before a single word was ever written, there were humans, fragile, curious, alone against the vastness of nature. Yet within them burned a spark that would ignite the story of us all. This is where humanity begins, in the shadows of prehistory. Archaeologists call it prehistoric archaeology, the study of a time when history had no language, when our ancestors spoke only with stone tools, fire, and art upon the walls of caves. And yet, from these fragments, we have pieced together the greatest story ever told, the rise of humanity. Imagine. 2.5 million years ago, the first crude stone struck against another. That sound, stone on stone, was the beginning of technology. The Oldowan tools, discovered in East Africa, are the oldest evidence of human ingenuity. From a simple flake of rock, survival was born. And then, something extraordinary happened. Humanity began to dream and to paint. In the caves of France and Spain, archaeologists uncovered masterpieces, thousands of years old, depicting animals, hunts, and visions of a world alive. These were not mere drawings. They were windows into the soul of early humans, proof that imagination was as vital as survival. Through prehistoric archaeology, we've discovered more than bones and stones. We've uncovered connections. Fossils tell us that Homo sapiens once walked side by side with Neanderthals. DNA reveals that we still carry fragments of their story in our blood. Up to 2% of modern human DNA belongs to them. We are not just descendants of one people. We are mosaics of many. But life was never easy. The Ice Age tested our ancestors with unimaginable cold. The wilds teemed with predators larger than any beast alive today. Yet against the odds, humanity endured. We mastered fire. We forged weapons. We began to bury our dead with care, hinting at belief, at spirituality, at something beyond survival. Think of this. More than 99% of human history is prehistoric. Everything we call civilization, writing, cities, nations, is but a blink compared to the vast ocean of time when humans were hunters, gatherers, wanderers. Without the resilience of those early people, there would be no us. Prehistoric archaeology reminds us that greatness is not measured by monuments of stone or empires of power, but by the courage to endure, to adapt, to imagine. From the first spark of fire to the first stroke of art, our ancestors carved a path through darkness, so that one day we could stand in the light. Welcome to the History Vault. Stay with us as we uncover hidden history. The story of humanity begins not in the glow of cities or the walls of empires, but in the silence of endless plains stretching across Africa. Imagine a world without roads, without language as we know it, without the certainty of tomorrow. It was here, nearly 2.5 million years ago, that a creature much like us took the first fragile steps toward becoming human. These were not kings or builders, not yet. They were survivors, struggling to endure in a world of predators, storms, and hunger. But inside them lay something extraordinary, the seed of thought, the spark of ingenuity, the ability to change not only their fate, but the fate of all generations to come. Archaeologists call this the dawn of prehistory. Fossils found in the Great Rift Valley of East Africa tell us that species like Australopithecus and early Homo walked upright, freeing their hands to do something revolutionary. They began to shape stone. At first glance, these tools were nothing more than sharp flakes broken off from larger rocks. But in reality, they were lifelines. With these, early humans cut through animal hides, broke open bones for marrow, and defended themselves against predators far stronger than they were. This was the Oldowan tool tradition, stretching back over 2 million years. And it marked the moment when survival no longer depended only on brute strength, but on intelligence and creativity. Now imagine one of these ancestors crouched by a riverbank, carefully striking stone against stone. Sparks fly. A shard breaks away, leaving a sharp edge. In that simple act, history shifted. For the first time, humanity had found a way to shape nature for its own use. It was the earliest form of technology. While other animals adapted only through instinct, humans began to adapt through invention. That difference would make all the difference. But life in this prehistoric world was never secure. The African landscape was unforgiving. Vast savannas teemed with lions, leopards, and hyenas, all hungry, all faster than the fragile beings trying to survive among them. There were droughts, wildfires, floods, and shifting climates that tested every ounce of resilience. Yet somehow our ancestors endured. Archaeological evidence suggests that they lived in small groups, moving constantly in search of food and water. They hunted when they could, scavenged when they must, and gathered roots, fruits, and seeds from the land around them. This way of life was harsh, but it shaped a bond between them. Cooperation was not optional. It was the only way forward. One of the most important discoveries of this time was not a tool, but a practice: sharing. When one hunter or scavenger returned with food, the group survived together. This social behavior, this sense of connection, would eventually lead to the foundations of family, community, and society. Even at the dawn of time, we were not just individuals. We were part of something larger, something that would define humanity through the ages. What makes this story even more remarkable is how fragile the thread of survival truly was. Fossils reveal that there were many branches of early humans. Some, like Homo habilis, thrived for a time but eventually vanished. Others, like Homo erectus, spread far beyond Africa, carrying fire and tools to distant lands. But many disappeared, leaving only bones and traces behind. We, Homo sapiens, are the only survivors of this long experiment of evolution. Every other cousin species is gone, and yet their story is also our story. Without them, without their attempts, failures, and fleeting victories, we would not be here. Archaeology has given us incredible insights into these beginnings. The bones of our ancestors, buried for millions of years, tell us about their strength, their injuries, even their diseases. Stone tools scattered across sites in Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia speak of hands that learned, failed, and tried again. In caves and open-air sites, scientists have pieced together a world long forgotten, a world that would otherwise be silent. From these fragments, we understand that intelligence was not a sudden gift, but a slow fire, kindled over countless generations. When we look at the modern world today, with skyscrapers, satellites, and sprawling cities, it is almost impossible to imagine how it all began with a small group of fragile beings breaking stones by the side of a river. Yet that is the truth. Every invention, every idea, every discovery of the modern age carries within it the shadow of that first spark. It began not with luxury, not with art, not even with speech, but with survival. And from survival grew imagination. This is why the study of prehistoric archaeology is so powerful. It does not just uncover bones and tools. It uncovers identity. It reminds us that the story of humanity is not about one great moment or one great civilization, but about countless small acts of endurance, scattered across millions of years. It reminds us that long before writing in history, there was struggle, and in that struggle, there was greatness. As we walk through the ruins of modern cities or marvel at the wonders of ancient monuments, it is easy to forget that our true beginning lies deeper, beneath the earth, in fragments of stone, in the worn-down edges of ancient tools, in the fossilized remains of those who came before us. They were not nameless shadows. They were the first to dream of a future, even if they could not see it. They lit the path that we still walk today. And so, the first spark of humanity was more than the making of tools or the lighting of fire. It was the making of us. It was the moment when fragile beings stood tall against impossible odds and said, through action, if not words, we will endure. That endurance is the legacy of prehistoric archaeology. It is the legacy of us all. The story of humanity cannot be told without stone. Long before metal, long before writing, and even long before fire was fully mastered, stone became the first partner of human ingenuity. With it, our ancestors shaped their world in ways that changed everything. It may seem simple to us now, a rock chipped against another, but in that simple act, history shifted. This was the true beginning of technology. Archaeologists call the earliest of these tools the Oldowan tradition. Dating back more than 2.5 million years, they were found in East Africa, in places like Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania and sites across Ethiopia and Kenya. At first glance, they look unremarkable, just sharp-edged fragments of stone, crude and irregular. Yet for the people who made them, these were lifelines. They could slice through animal hides, carve meat from bone, and even break into the marrow inside, a rich source of energy. With these tools, early humans gained access to resources no other creature could reach. It was the difference between hunger and survival. But human progress rarely stands still. Over hundreds of thousands of years, these tools became more sophisticated. Around 1.7 million years ago, a new tradition emerged, the Acheulean hand axe. Unlike the sharp flakes of the Oldowan, these tools were carefully shaped, symmetrical, and efficient. They could chop wood, butcher large animals, and serve as multi-purpose instruments for daily life. Some were so finely crafted that archaeologists debate whether they had more than practical value, whether they were also symbols of skill or status. Imagine an early human presenting a perfectly shaped hand axe, not only as a tool but as a sign of ability. In that gesture, we can almost see the roots of culture and pride. Stone tools were not simply objects. They were stepping stones for the human mind. Each tool carried the memory of the one before it. A child watching a parent strike stone against stone would learn not just by instinct, but by observation. Over generations, this passing down of knowledge became the earliest form of teaching. It was not language as we know it, but it was communication. It was tradition. And tradition is the backbone of civilization. What makes this even more remarkable is the scale of time involved. Imagine a hand axe design that lasted over 1 million years. While modern technology changes every decade, our ancestors used the same basic tool design for longer than the entire history of writing. This tells us two things. First, that the tools were incredibly effective. And second, that the pace of change was slow, shaped not by comfort, but by necessity. Survival, not convenience, was the goal. As these tools spread, so too did humanity. Fossils and artifacts show that Homo erectus, carrying Acheulean hand axes, journeyed out of Africa into Europe and Asia. They crossed unfamiliar landscapes, faced new climates, and encountered creatures they had never seen before. And in their hands, stone tools gave them the means to adapt. With stone, they could cut, scrape, dig, and build. It was technology portable enough to carry anywhere, yet powerful enough to transform the way they lived. Stone tools also opened the door to cooperation. Large animals like mammoths or bison could not be brought down by one human alone. But with sharpened tools and coordinated effort, groups could hunt together, sharing the rewards. The very act of shaping tools likely required interaction, teaching, learning, and correcting. Each strike of stone was not only a physical act, but also a shared knowledge, an inheritance passed from one generation to the next. Archaeological discoveries continue to surprise us. In sites across Europe, Asia, and Africa, stone tools have been uncovered in vast numbers, scattered across ancient landscapes. Some are worn down, showing heavy use, while others appear pristine, perhaps lost or abandoned. Each tool is like a fossil of the human mind, a frozen moment of thought captured in stone. Together, they form a record not just of survival, but of progress. And progress was not limited to function. Some stone tools show evidence of artistry, careful shaping beyond what was necessary. Why would early humans spend extra time refining a tool when a rough edge would do? Perhaps it was to display skill. Perhaps it was a gesture of identity, of pride, or even beauty. These early touches hint at the very beginnings of creativity. They remind us that humanity was never only about survival. Even in the harshest times, there was room for expression. It is easy to overlook these humble stones when compared to the great monuments of later civilizations. Yet without them, those monuments would never have existed. Every temple, every city, every invention of the modern world traces its ancestry to the first stone struck with purpose. That spark of innovation, born millions of years ago, is the reason we can hold technology in our hands today. So, when we look at a chipped piece of rock in a museum display, we are not simply looking at a tool. We are looking at the very first invention, the foundation of all technology, the symbol of human determination. It was stone that first separated us from the animals around us. Stone that allowed us to carve a place in a dangerous world. Stone that gave us the time to imagine what might come next. The birth of technology was not sudden. It was slow, patient, and shaped by countless lives across unimaginable time. But it was unbroken. From the first shard of stone to the tools that carried humanity across continents, the line of progress never faded. It built upon itself, one strike at a time, one idea at a time, until the world was changed forever. And so the story of stone tools is not just the story of survival. It is the story of ambition, of creativity, of the first steps toward everything we are today. In the rhythm of stone against stone, in the sparks that flew from the earliest strikes, we can still hear the echo of humanity's first invention, and with it, the beginning of our journey. In the long story of human survival, there was one discovery that changed everything. It was not a tool carved from stone or a weapon shaped for the hunt. It was fire. Imagine the darkness of prehistoric nights, where the only sounds were the growls of predators and the restless winds sweeping through forests and open plains. For millions of years, humans and their ancestors lived in fear of the night. Then something extraordinary happened. Early humans learned not just to steal fire from natural flames sparked by lightning, but eventually to create it themselves. And with that moment, the balance between humanity and nature shifted forever. At first, fire was frightening. It burned, destroyed, and consumed everything in its path. But once people learned to control it, fire became a partner in survival. It offered warmth during bitter cold nights, protection against predators lurking in the shadows, and a new way to prepare food. Cooking transformed human diets, making tough roots and raw meat easier to chew, easier to digest, and safer to eat. Scientists today believe that cooked food gave humans more energy that helped fuel the growth of larger brains. Without fire, our story might have taken a very different turn. But fire was not only about food and warmth. It was about safety and confidence in a dangerous world. Picture a small group of early humans gathered around a glowing fire, the flames pushing back the darkness. The fire created a circle of light, a boundary between the known and the unknown. Beyond it were hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and wolves. Within it, people shared food, stories, and a sense of belonging. For the first time, humanity could claim control over a piece of nature's raw power. That sense of control was revolutionary. As time passed, fire shaped the way people lived. Camps were built around it, and communities began to form. Night was no longer just a time of fear, but a chance for social life, planning, and creativity. The flickering flames may have even inspired some of the earliest forms of art and storytelling, as shadows danced on cave walls and imagination grew. Fire gave more than survival. It gave humans the ability to dream, to plan, and to connect. Still, life was never easy. The Ice Ages brought brutal challenges. Vast sheets of ice spread across much of the world, freezing landscapes and forcing people to adapt. Temperatures dropped, animals migrated, and food became scarce. Yet with fire, humans endured. They used it to stay warm in caves, to soften animal hides for clothing, and to cook whatever food they could find. Where other species vanished, humans survived. The control of fire also opened doors to new tools and new skills. Hard stones could be cracked and reshaped through heating. Spears could be hardened in flames, making them stronger for the hunt. Even as early as hundreds of thousands of years ago, fire was shaping not only daily survival, but also innovation. Slowly, humans were becoming inventors as well as survivors, and fire was not confined to a single region. From Africa, the cradle of humanity, people carried it with them as they moved into new lands. Across Europe, Asia, and eventually into the farthest corners of the earth, fire was at the heart of human migration. Wherever people went, fire followed, leaving traces of ash and charred bone in caves and archaeological sites that we still uncover today. Each discovery tells us that fire was not just a tool, it was a constant companion. But perhaps the most profound impact of fire was on human thought itself. With the warmth of fire, humans could stay awake longer into the night. They could think, plan, and share. Fire gave time for reflection, for teaching the young, for passing knowledge between generations. This quiet time around the flames may have been the seedbed of culture, memory, and human imagination. Without fire, there may never have been the leap to art, language, or religion. Even so, fire was dangerous. Entire forests could be destroyed by uncontrolled flames. Camps could be wiped out in an instant. To master fire was to learn both respect and caution. lessons that humanity still struggles with today. Yet the balance between risk and reward was worth it. Because with fire came possibilities no species before us had ever known. It is astonishing to think that this single discovery, fire, was the foundation of so much that defines us. It shaped our bodies, our diets, our communities, and our imaginations. It made us explorers of the night and survivors of the ice. It was the silent partner in our earliest steps toward civilization. Without it, the story of humanity might have ended before it even began. And as we trace the sparks of fire across prehistory, we are reminded that the simplest things, a flame, a spark, a glow, can carry the greatest power. Fire did more than light the darkness. It lit the path of humanity's future, a path we still walk today. Deep inside dark caves, hidden away from sunlight, early humans left behind something extraordinary. On rough walls, they painted animals, hunting scenes, and mysterious symbols. These were not random marks. They were deliberate, careful, and meaningful. They stand as some of the earliest evidence of human imagination and the birth of art. Now picture the scene. A small group gathers inside a cave, lit only by the flicker of firelight. Shadows move across the walls as someone, holding a piece of charcoal or colored earth, presses their vision into stone. Horses, bison, mammoths, and deer come to life in earthy reds, deep blacks, and bright yellows. For people who lived over 30,000 years ago, these paintings were more than decoration. They were a window into their world, their beliefs, and their struggle for survival. The caves of Lascaux in France, discovered in 1940 by accident, contain more than 600 images. Some stretch across the walls in sweeping motion, filled with energy and life. In Spain, the Altamira cave holds breathtaking images of bison, painted with incredible skill around 36,000 years ago. These works show that early humans were not only hunters and gatherers, they were also storytellers and artists, driven by a need to leave their mark on the world. But what did these paintings mean? That is a question that continues to inspire debate among archaeologists and historians. Some believe the paintings were part of rituals, perhaps to ensure success in hunting. Others suggest they may have been linked to early forms of religion or shamanism, where caves became sacred spaces to connect with unseen powers. Another idea is that these paintings were teaching tools, a way for elders to explain the dangers and lessons of life to the young. Regardless of the exact purpose, one thing is clear. These images reveal the beginning of symbolic thought. To create art means to imagine something not in front of you and then make it real. It means thinking beyond survival, beyond the present moment, and into the realm of ideas. That leap was a turning point in human history. It was the birth of culture, and it wasn't only paintings. In caves across Europe, Africa, and Asia, archaeologists have found carvings, sculptures, and even musical instruments. Small figurines, carved from stone or bone, often called Venus figurines, appear across many sites, dating back tens of thousands of years. Their exaggerated forms, often of the female body, may have symbolized fertility, life, or community. In Germany, flutes made from bird bones over 40,000 years old show that music, too, was part of human expression. Art was not a luxury. It was a need. In a world filled with danger, art allowed humans to express their hopes, fears, and identities. It connected communities, reinforced shared beliefs, and gave meaning to lives that were often short and harsh. The creation of art was as vital as the hunt, as necessary as fire. It made people feel human. What is fascinating is that this creativity was not limited to one group. Neanderthals, once thought to be less advanced, also created art. In Spanish caves, symbols painted at least 64,000 years ago, before Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, prove that Neanderthals too had imagination and symbolic thought. This discovery reshaped how we view our closest relatives. It shows that creativity runs deep in the human lineage. The act of painting inside caves also carried another element: mystery. Caves are dark, dangerous places, often stretching deep underground. To paint there meant venturing into spaces filled with silence and echoes, places that might have felt like gateways to other worlds. The effort itself suggests the importance of the act. People chose caves not because they were convenient, but because they were powerful. The walls became canvases, but perhaps they were also seen as living surfaces, places where the spirit of animals and ancestors could be reached. Even the techniques used were remarkable. Early humans used natural pigments like iron oxide for red, manganese for black, and ground ochre for yellows and browns. They mixed these with fat, water, or saliva to make paint. Sometimes they used brushes made from animal hair. Other times, they blew pigment through hollow bones, creating a spray effect. Some figures were even etched into the rock with sharp tools, combining painting and carving. The level of skill and creativity is astonishing. These images, sculptures, and sounds remind us of something essential. Humans have always sought to tell stories. Even before written language, even before cities, art gave people a way to record their existence. It was not about survival in the immediate sense, but about memory, meaning, and identity. It showed that humans were no longer just reacting to the world. They were interpreting it. Today, when we stand in those caves or look at artifacts in museums, we see more than pictures on stone. We see the spark of imagination that still defines us. We see the first chapters of a story that continues in every painting, every song, and every story told today. Art was humanity's first voice, and it still speaks to us across tens of thousands of years. The caves remind us of who we are. They tell us that long before the rise of cities, kingdoms, and modern civilization, people already dreamed, created, and searched for meaning. And in the shadows of those painted walls, we see ourselves, not so different from those who lived long ago, with the same desire to leave something behind that will outlast us. Across the wide span of prehistory, humanity was never alone. For much of our early story, different species of humans walked the earth together. They hunted, they gathered, and they endured. Some left faint traces, while others left deep imprints in our very blood. Today, through bones, artifacts, and even strands of ancient DNA, we can piece together a remarkable truth. We are not the product of one line, but of many. Around 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, emerged in Africa. They were not the only humans alive. To the north and west, in the colder regions of Europe and parts of Western Asia, lived the Neanderthals. Stockier and more powerful than us, they were built for harsh climates. Their heavy brows, strong limbs, and barrel chests told the story of people adapted to survive ice and snow. Yet they were not brutish as once believed. They used tools, wore clothing, buried their dead, and even made art. In many ways, Neanderthals were every bit as human as we are. Farther east, deep in the caves of Siberia, lived another branch, one only discovered in recent years, the Denisovans. Their existence came to light not from full skeletons, but from a finger bone and a tooth found in Denisova Cave. Genetic analysis revealed a new kind of human, close to both Neanderthals and modern humans, yet distinct. Though little is known about their appearance, their DNA still survives within us, especially among people of Asia and the Pacific. These species were not distant from each other. They overlapped in time, and in many places they met. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals shared the landscapes of Europe and the Middle East. Sometimes they competed for resources, other times they mixed. The same happened with Denisovans. Modern genetic studies have proven what bones alone could not. Our ancestors interbred with these groups, leaving behind a living legacy. Today, nearly all non-African humans carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. In parts of Asia and Oceania, many people also carry Denisovan DNA. These fragments are not just curiosities. They influence our health, immunity, and even physical traits. But if these groups were so capable, why did they vanish while we endured? This question remains one of the great mysteries of prehistory. One idea is climate change. As Ice Age conditions shifted, food sources grew unpredictable, and small populations of Neanderthals and Denisovans may have struggled to adapt as quickly as Homo sapiens. Another theory points to competition. Our ancestors may have had more advanced tools, wider social networks, or better strategies for survival. With larger groups and stronger connections, Homo sapiens could outlast their cousins. Yet the story is not one of conquest alone. Evidence shows that Neanderthals were skilled hunters, using thrusting spears and traps to bring down large animals. They made adhesives from birch bark, an early form of chemistry. They cared for their sick and elderly, a sign of compassion and community. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, skeletons suggest individuals with severe injuries were cared for long after they could no longer hunt or walk. That kind of care speaks of a humanity deeper than survival. The Denisovans, though more mysterious, left behind evidence of remarkable achievements as well. Jewelry found in Denisova Cave, carved from ivory and stone, suggests creativity and craftsmanship. Their DNA also reveals adaptations to high-altitude living, passed down to modern Tibetans who can thrive in the thin air of the Himalayas. Such traits show how diverse human groups were uniquely shaped by the lands they called home. The encounter between Homo sapiens and these other humans was not just a clash of species, but also an exchange of ideas, genes, and survival strategies. Some scientists argue that contact with Neanderthals may have helped Homo sapiens adjust more quickly to colder climates when they first entered Europe. The inheritance of immune system genes from Neanderthals and Denisovans may have strengthened our defenses against new diseases. In this way, the bloodlines of the past still shape us in ways we are only beginning to understand. Still, by about 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals had disappeared. The Denisovans, too, faded from view, leaving behind only genetic echoes. The reasons may never be fully known, but what remains is a sobering lesson. Survival is never guaranteed. Humanity's path could have ended with them. Instead, Homo sapiens became the last human species standing, carrying within us the traces of all who came before. When we look in the mirror, we do not see only the face of modern humanity. Hidden within us are fragments of Neanderthal strength, Denisovan resilience, and countless ancestors who shaped the path of survival. Their voices may be silent, but their legacy lives in our bones, our blood, and even the way we adapt to the world today. The story of these ancient bloodlines challenges the idea that history is simple. It reminds us that we are not the product of isolation, but of connection. Humanity's past is not a straight line, but a web, woven with encounters, unions, and exchanges. And in that web, every thread mattered. When archaeologists brush the dust from a fossilized bone, or scientists sequence strands of DNA, they are not just studying the dead. They are uncovering the family we never knew we had. They are showing us that our story is larger, richer, and far more intertwined than we ever imagined. And so, as we trace these ancient bloodlines, we come to a profound truth. We carry within us the memory of a shared humanity. A humanity that struggled, adapted, dreamed, and endured. Though some branches ended, their roots remain in us. In every heartbeat, in every breath, echoes the legacy of a world once filled with many kinds of humans, all shaping the story of who we are today. For nearly 2 million years, the story of humanity unfolded without cities, without writing, and without the inventions we often associate with civilization. The vast majority of our history lies in that silent stretch we call prehistory. It was during this time that humans discovered how to use fire, created the first tools, painted the walls of caves, and survived against the odds in a world filled with danger. Though these people left no written records, they left something even more profound: the blueprint of what it means to be human. When we look back on those early ages, it's easy to see them as distant or primitive. But the truth is, the lessons of prehistory are still with us. Our bodies, our minds, even our social instincts are shaped by those millions of years. In fact, 99% of human existence has been lived in this prehistoric world. Everything we are today is built upon foundations laid long before the first city walls rose or the first words were carved into stone. Consider how fire transformed our story. The ability to control flames not only allowed early humans to survive freezing nights, but also encouraged community. Gathered around a fire, people learned to share, to teach, and to imagine. In many ways, fire was the first classroom, the first stage, and the first gathering place. Even now, we instinctively gather around sources of light and warmth, whether it's a campfire, a festival, or the glow of a screen. The memory of fire still burns inside us. The same is true with tools. From the sharp flakes of stone to carefully shaped hand axes, tools were the first signs of human creativity. They extended our strength, protected us from predators, and made survival possible in landscapes where bare hands would never have been enough. Today's technology, computers, satellites, medical advances, may seem far removed from stone tools, but the principle is the same. We imagine what does not yet exist and shape it with our hands. The spark of invention that began in prehistory has never gone out. Art, too, tells us something essential about ourselves. Those first cave paintings, etched and painted with such care, were not created for survival alone. They were created because humans needed to express something deeper. The images of animals and symbols on stone show that even in the harshest conditions, people still longed for beauty, meaning, and connection. This desire continues today in every painting, song, and story. It reminds us that art is not a luxury. It is part of what makes us human, but perhaps the greatest lesson of prehistory comes from our shared bloodlines. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens lived alongside Neanderthals and Denisovans. They were different, yet they were family. We exchanged ideas, shared lands, and even mixed our blood. Modern DNA proves that the survival of Homo sapiens was not a story of complete separation, but one of connection. The genes of those other humans still live inside us, influencing our health, our resilience, and even our ability to thrive in certain environments. This truth shows us that humanity has never been one pure line, but a tapestry woven together from many threads. Prehistory also reminds us of fragility. Neanderthals and Denisovans were intelligent, capable, and strong. Yet they vanished. Climate shifts, competition, or sheer chance played a role in their disappearance. Their story warns us that survival is never guaranteed, not even for the strongest. It took adaptability, cooperation, and sometimes luck for Homo sapiens to continue. That same lesson applies today, as humanity faces new challenges of climate, environment, and survival. The past whispers to us, adapt or risk fading away. At the same time, prehistory gives us reason for hope. Our ancestors survived ice ages, droughts, predators, and scarcity with nothing but fire, stone, and community. They endured hardships that would test even the strongest today, yet they found ways to move forward. If they could survive such challenges, then so can we. Their resilience is a reminder that the strength to endure is written into our very nature. When archaeologists uncover a stone tool, a cave painting, or a fragment of bone, they are not just uncovering artifacts. They are uncovering ourselves. Each discovery is a message from the deep past, telling us where we came from and what we carry within us. It connects us to people who, though separated from us by tens of thousands of years, thought, dreamed, and loved much as we do. In the end, the legacy of prehistory is not about how primitive those times were, but about how human they were. These ancestors, living in small groups and facing endless challenges, laid the foundation for everything we know. Their survival became our survival. Their creativity became our creativity. Their courage became our story. And so, as we walk through the modern world of technology, cities, and global connections, we carry inside us the lessons of those who came before. Prehistory may seem far away, but it lives within us, in the way we gather, in the way we create, and in the way we dream. It reminds us that our journey did not begin with civilization. It began with firelight flickering on cave walls, with hands shaping stone, with voices sharing stories in the dark. Their world was fragile, but they endured. And because they endured, we are here. The legacy of prehistory is not just their story, it is ours, carried forward in every step of humanity's long journey, from the dawn of time to the present day. The story of prehistory is not just about bones buried in the earth or paintings hidden deep within caves. It is the story of us, of fire that lit the night, of tools that shaped survival, of art that gave voice to imagination, and of bloodlines that connected us to worlds now lost. For millions of years, humans endured hardships beyond what we can imagine. Ice ages, predators, hunger, and uncertainty. Yet they survived. They dreamed. And because of them, we are here. Their legacy is not gone. It lives inside every one of us. In the way we gather, in the way we create, and in the way we hope for tomorrow. They passed the torch and we carry it now. The question is no longer about where we came from. It is about where we are going, and what mark we will leave behind for those who will one day look back at us. If this journey into humanity's earliest chapters moved you, stay with us. Subscribe to History Vault and continue exploring the hidden past. The next story is waiting, and it may change the way you see yourself and the world we share. Thank you for watching History Vault.